Another edition of the Bff Show. I'm Brendan.
I'm Franco.
And welcome to, it's going to be a great week. It's going to be a great week, but before we get into our fantastic week of fun, because, you know, you go to, what channel are we on? AMP TV?
AMP 1.
AMP
We're
1?
actually on the AMP Premiere station.
AMP, is it called AMP Premiere or is it AMP 1?
Oh, it's AMP 1, but I was retitling it, so maybe they'll take that suggestion.
I want to put on the bottom, first call out, AMP Premiere, number 1 station. AMP Premiere.
Got it, done.
.. 1 station. You're not enthusiastic about this. I'm upset. Now I'm upset.
I got it.
Before the show didn't
happen.
start, I made you upset because I was 17 minutes late. You called me out on it. You didn't think you were on mic. You were. I heard it. It hurt my feelings. And now I feel like it's hanging over the show.
Well, the best way to get it out is to talk about it, which you just did.
I did.
So I officially forgive you on air, and I will make your graphic work.
Thank you.
As a sign of our friendship moving forward.
That's what we do here on the Bff Show. We don't hide. This is unscripted. It's real. It's reality. And our love will never fail us, Franco.
Yeah, I mean that pretty much sums it up.
I was hoping for a more stronger response, but I'll get past it. Franco, give us a race update. You were training. What is training like? Have you made it to CrossFit? You were concerned about your CrossFit intake. What is going on with you with your running?
So I was on the road, so I in fact did not make it to CrossFit. Tomorrow will be CrossFit. I did put in another 20-something miles since we've talked last.
Oh, so nice.
The mileage is there, which is nice. And I ordered a new backpack to wear on the race day.
Oh, very
so
cool.
I had my backpack for a race day, and we got 26 miles in, so it's looking good.
Now, since we're on the subject of training, when this airs, it will be Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to all our famous people that we know, all of our fans, maybe your family. My family is on the East Coast. They might not get this, but we wish you all out there in the world of AMP Premiere a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving and safe Thanksgiving. But Franco, training is tough during this time. Holiday season. This is the time when people fall off the wagon with their regimen. They eat poorly. They are not taking care of themselves. They're not going out to the gym on their regular rotation. Do you have any tips for people? Because this is where it starts, my friend. You know this. I know this. And maybe you don't because you're more disciplined than I am. But I know this because I like to have a couple beers. I will eat turkey, and then I'll wreck my diet. But what can you suggest, if you have any suggestions, on how you can beat the trend, America's trend of falling off the wagon with your workout regimen?
So what I do suggest is, one, try to find a way to be active on Thanksgiving before dinner. Be it walk to the park or run one of the many turkey trots across the country, maybe stop by the gym, watch the parade on your iPad, all options like what kind of walking. But if that's not possible, what I would say is stick to the one plate rule. So
no seconds.
Fill your plate you have one plate to fill as much as you want, but that one plate's what you're going to stick to, and if you do that, I think you'll be able to maintain your nutrition enough to survive.
I'm a grazer, Franco, so that means when there's snacks, I will eat the chips, and then there'll be like another plate of shrimp cocktail. I'll eat that. I just graze all day, and that's my worst part. So my mental note is I need to make sure that I'm out of the living room where there's snacks or any other area where there's snacks until dinner time. But it's very tough because people will pressure you and want you to eat. But I like that suggestion. Go for a run. Walk outside. Those are all awesome options, Franco.
You're welcome. And then if you are a grazer and you snack, just kind of snack a little smarter. So avoid the chips. Shrimp cocktail is okay. This is pretty not high caloric intake and a low fat. So just kind of be smart about it. Don't maybe go for the Tostitos and terrible salsa that I'm sure you'll have. Maybe go more for the fresh stuff or protein base.
You're judging my snacks, but you were accurate because you know me. So yes, I will do my best. So let's transition now, Franco. We had Survivor Series this past Sunday. We'll get into most of the matches, I think. We have some time today. But what were I guess let's start anywhere you want to start this time, Franco. I mean, we watched it together. We had a good time. We always have a good time watching these pay-per-view events together. But this was kind of a weird card. So, Franco, where would you like to start to sort of dismantle and take this thing apart?
So I will say that there were good matches on the card. The problem stems a lot from the order they were put in.
Yeah.
The main event, or what should have been the main event, which is the Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles, was really well done. It was predictable, but that's okay. But it was a great match, and they did a good job. The Shield versus New Day match was fantastic. Probably should have been your co-main event, given that they're pushing Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose as your main event caliber guys. And they're all young enough to kind of continually run the program, whereas our main event we actually got, the average age was 40.5. And
great stat.
As you accurately pointed out on Twitter, it's felt more like Survivor 2005 as opposed to this year's. So that was my biggest issue. As far as the main event, it was terrible. They eliminated the stars that should have had a longer time in the match. And we ended up with Triple H versus Kurt Angle versus Randy Orton and Shane McMahon.
Yeah.
Which is something that we've done for literally the last decade. And that's not me being like dramatic. We've actually done that for the last decade.
Yeah, I think, the big thing for me was going into this, WWE wanted to make you feel like that there was some heavy stipulations associated with these matches, that this is going to determine brand supremacy, and none of it mattered, Franco. None of it mattered, and that's what I said during the entire time. Even matches that were good, you mentioned the Sheamus, Cesaro, Usos match. You're right. That was a good match, but I could not get into it because there was no reason to be into it. They were just thrown together, and it was difficult for me to digest. And I think that it goes away from what traditionally Survivor Series has been, where you have usually a natural progression of two teams or two groups of people that really hate each other throughout the year, and then they settle their differences at Survivor Series. What WWE in the last, I want to say 10, 15 years has done is sort of crowbar in these stipulations and these rivalries, and they've always defaulted to it's Raw versus SmackDown. So for one day out of the year, they actually care about, for whatever reason, all the wrestlers all of a sudden flip a switch and care about whether their brand is better than not. And they throw out all the storylines that they built out, and they put pairings together that don't make any sense, and then under the banner of it's for Raw or it's for SmackDown. So that was my biggest complaint. The second one, I agree with you. That main event was a wreck. The young talent that should have been promoted, or at least the new talent that should have been promoted, got eliminated so quickly. It was exciting for 2 seconds to see Finn Balor versus Nakamura, and then that was gone. And then we were left with Braun Strowman, who is the only new talent that came out of this thing looking good. I don't know if I would say great, looking good, but it was all built around Kurt Angle, Triple H, Shane McMahon.
Yeah, I think the new subtitle for this would be Survivor Series Missed Opportunity.
Yeah.
You could have had Jordan turn heel.
Yep.
You could have brought Paige back in the women's match. You could have had Nakamura kind of run the table. You could have had Strowman show down with maybe Nakamura or Rude. Instead, we saw Kurt Angle, who frankly looks terrible.
Yeah, he looks not good.
When you can't perform your finisher, which is really just a spinning fireman's carry, it's probably a bad sign. And it sucks to admit that because he's been a great wrestler for a long time, but his best years are behind him, and the dream matches we thought about just aren't going to happen. And I think Survivor Series was a sad tombstone on that fact.
And then you had Triple H standing triumphantly again for the last 20 years. It seems like he's been in that scene. I think the best match. You're right. You hit the nail right on the head. That was Lesnar and AJ Styles. It was compelling. That was, even without a built-in storyline, it worked because they were telling a story in the ring that made sense. That was compelling. I thought maybe they'd flip the switch on an AJ Styles win, even though it was very far-fetched. But Lesnar sold the hell out of his knee, and that made it more compelling. It was just, you got a great match out of Brock Lesnar, which doesn't always happen. It did not happen when he was against Braun Strowman at No Mercy. It was kind of a bit of a dud, disappointing match. This was sort of a nice makeup to that. And on the women's side, you're right. It would have been great to have Paige involved. The 5-on-5 Raw versus SmackDown women's match did not make much sense at all either. There was no story. Asuka won, and she should have. And then you had Charlotte versus Alexa Bliss, which, again, I think it was telegraphed that Charlotte was going to win, and she did. Overall, it was disappointing. If there was no Lesnar-Styles match, it would have been an absolute disaster. Monday Night Raw, I don't know if you got a chance to check in on it, Franco, or not.
I did. Yep.
That was more exciting because the aforementioned Paige actually did return with 2 NXT talents, which their names escape me out right now, but I think that was part of what my point would have bumped in. You had Peyton Royce down there, you have Nikki Cross, you have Ruby Riott, you have Ember Moon, you have a lot of great talent, and then you have these 2 NXT stars that came up that Mandy was one of them, and then I forget the other person's name, but again, not really known that well in NXT, that all of a sudden are elevated to the main roster with Paige, which hopefully they hide them a bit because for all intents and purposes, they're not really well known. And then you had Jason Jordan tease a bit of a heel turn, and then you had randomly Roman Reigns beating The Miz, which was super disappointing to me, to become a Grand Slam champion. Again, another made-up accolade in the WWE world that has been diluted for so long. It's not like when it was Jericho who was grand champion for a while, which was exciting. What were your thoughts on the Paige return, Franco, paired with the 2 NXT wrestlers and the IC title win by Roman Reigns?
So the Paige return was interesting. I would care more if I thought they're going to do something with it. I think they're just going to have another Miztourage style thing where these 2 characters get no personality and are just kind of the satellites that get fed to different people. So, I mean, great, Paige is back. I'm actually not that big of a Paige fan. I think she could have been used better and could have used to elevate Asuka in a feud. Instead, we're going to get these 3 versus, I have no idea, maybe Alexa Bliss. We'll see. The Reigns thing, the only silver lining is that maybe, just maybe, this pulls him away from the main event at WrestleMania, and he ends up holding it till then. It's not likely, but maybe. The unfortunate part is that The Miz has been the best promo and the best worker recently, actually, and to have him lose the title on free TV with not really a match where he stood a chance or had good offense is really unfortunate, and it's a disservice to him, and he deserves more from the company. So unless they're going to elevate him to be the guy that faces Lesnar somehow, which I doubt, he's probably going to be relegated to the lower mid-card. So the best thing happening to him is he gets traded. We'll see what happens.
You make a good point about the looming Lesnar issue because Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer, longtime wrestling reporter, put out a report that Vince McMahon's kind of soured on Finn Balor. Finn Balor was being set up to be Brock Lesnar's next opponent. I believe he lost against Samoa Joe last night. He got squashed by Kane, of all people, a couple of weeks ago, and kind of his momentum is just flat right now, and he's gotten knocked down the rung a bit. So now you kind of have an interesting prospect here with who do you put up against Brock Lesnar, and the question is, do you pull the trigger on Braun Strowman, or do you save that for WrestleMania, because that's the hottest young star you have right now is Braun Strowman. But the report going back almost a year ago was that Vince once again, is dead set on Roman Reigns going up against Brock Lesnar for the title, building toward Roman kicking out of an F5, which would be super disappointing if that's a fact. He'll probably get booed out of the building. It's in New Orleans. It's the home of where Daniel Bryan made his triumphant win. So it's not. So if you follow that up with a Roman Reigns victory, I think you're in for a world of hurt. That's just my opinion at this point. But Franco, what do you think about the current title situation? Who would you pick at this point to go up against Lesnar? We do have. It's actually not that far away. It's mid-January. We're coming up on the end of November now, and they don't have much time to build this.
So I think what they should do is elevate Samoa Joe and have him be the guy Lesnar beats at Royal Rumble, and kind of keep Strowman occupied with Kane for a little bit, have him squash Kane, and then hopefully build towards Lesnar-Strowman at WrestleMania and leave Reigns to his own devices, maybe doing a Shield versus who knows match. That's kind of the real question on the roster. What do you do with the Shield?
Yep.
Because there's not room for Seth Rollins or Dean Ambrose in the main event scene. They can't really be in the IC title scene because Reigns already has the title. So I guess maybe you see them challenge the tag team belt and we have some sort of hyper match or special match. Maybe it's a rematch between New Day and the Shield at WrestleMania, but we'll see.
So Franco, we'll keep an eye on that, obviously, but let's switch gears now. Oh, ooh, that I didn't. I looked down at my notes, looked up to see you giving me that stare, and I was terrified. But I'm glad it was virtual, or else I might have peed my pants. Anyway, so Jerry Jones, our friend, is he a friend of the show?
Man.
Is he, or not really? He's kind of an in-betweener.
He's not a friend of the
Not a
show,
friend of the
but
show.
he is definitely one of our more popular topics. So I guess he can be the rear of the show.
Sure, rear
or
of the
donkey
show.
of the show.
Here's
Yeah.
the only reason why he's somewhat friendly to the show, in my opinion, is that he's trying desperately to knock down Roger Goodell, which to me is just hilarious. So give him 1 point for that. He's still in the negative, but 1 point.
Okay.
So Jerry Jones, a lot of the owners now are not happy with him against his one-man band against Roger Goodell, to the point where the owners are asking him to stop. In particular, one owner that's not happy is Arthur Blank, Franco.
Yeah, Arthur Blank. First off, who sends letters anymore in the world of commerce? So Jerry Jones sent a letter, as in through the postal service. For our viewers that are a little younger,
Yeah.
that means he put a stamp on it, and it took 4 to 5 days to get across the country to Atlanta. Basically saying, are we going to vote on this contract or not? Kind of like the box, like, will you go to prom with me?
Yeah.
Check yes or check no. Arthur Blank, in turn, instead of responding with just a simple yes or no, checked no and said, by the way, you're kind of not doing a very good job and you're acting against the league's best interests. Beware. And that's me giving you the crib notes. It was a little bit longer and a little more severe sounding. But then he wrote it back to him in a note as well. So right now we have correspondence via letter determining really if Jerry Jones is going to face any kind of action. And that's exactly the year 2017 is. We're just absolutely backwards and upside down.
Yeah, just two old billionaires writing letters. You would think that this was the 1800s. No, you're right. You make a great point. It's 2017. Part of me just thinks like Jerry Jones just doesn't want anything to leak, and he's like, you know what, I'm gonna go old school. You can't hack a letter, so deal with it. If I was a Jerry Jones, I'd probably make all my correspondence handwritten notes just to really annoy people, and then make sure I'm not getting hacked and any of my stuff getting leaked. I don't know where this goes. This is such a weird, bizarre. Again, this whole NFL season's just been weird, and again, we've talked about this on the show. I have not really cared at all about this season. I have been interested minimally in what's going on, and you and I have talked about it. You watch way more than I do this year, but I've just been disinterested, and I think a lot of it stems from this is the type of nonsense that it's just not. No one's talking about the product because the product is poor. The NFL management is poor. The leadership is poor. All of it is not an enjoyable experience. Fantasy football, we'll talk in a little bit, that's been a nightmare because that has not been fun to try and figure out who are they going to play. Coaches making random backwards decisions. Is that part of this, Frank? Are you as disillusioned? Does this just add to it, or are you still, you're fighting, I feel like you're fighting through to just get to the pure goodness of a football Sunday, which I think that's the point. But I'm having such difficulty getting there.
So I don't agree with you. I think the product's been good. I think there's been a lot of good football happening. There's been a lot of cool things happening. Carson Wentz's ascension in the second year. The Rams doing a complete turnaround with one of the youngest coaches in the league. The Chargers somehow coming back from being a losing team a bunch to being a good team. The product is there. The problem is that we have too much taking away from the game itself. So we started the season with the sit or kneel thing, which we won't even get into. Right. And that basically triumphed over games. Then we got into the Jerry Jones thing and the Papa John's thing, and that pulled away. Then Ezekiel Elliott, who thank God is finally suspended, which he deserved to be, that whole thing pulled away. We spent so little time actually on football and more on all this other crap. And that's what it is. It's crap. That's taken away from the season experience. I do think if you're maybe a true fan, like a hyper fan, or at least at the utmost of the casual level, it's been okay. Just if you're somewhere in the middle, it's been an awful lot to take in and kind of deal with.
Yeah, I think that maybe around playoff time I'll be invested. I love watching playoff football, but I've surprised myself with how little I've actually dedicated to watching. And I think, there's a lot of noise, like you said. And I think even looking at the quarterbacks that are out there too, it's, when you have Watson go down, you have Rodgers go down, you have poor play from Eli Manning, and just like half of the quarterbacks on these rosters are just god awful. And I think that contributes to the malaise, my malaise at least, and I think in general with people talking not so much about what's on the field, but what's going on off the field. And speaking of on the field, I'm on fire with transitions today. Let's talk about fantasy football, because you, my friend, were on with Tyrod Taylor. Despite being benched, if you played Tyrod Taylor and you had the chutzpah, the je ne sais quoi, the things I can't say on this air on Amp Premiere, and played him, it still actually worked out for you. And quite frankly, in my case, would have worked out way better had I had Tyrod Taylor to play, because I played Dak, and Dak was terrible. But talked about your call, Franco, your solid insight.
Yeah, so last week I said start Tyrod. I said that he is going to be able to run the offense because he's running it with nothing. Then all of a sudden, the Bills decided to bench him in favor of a rookie, despite still being in the playoff hunt, actually pretty firmly in the AFC playoff hunt, which was baffling. And I thought, wow, I'm going to have to go ahead and eat crow on Amp Premiere. But fortunately, what we thought would happen did happen, and the rookie threw 5 interceptions in the first half. Not 1, not 2, 5 interceptions, proving that a player that probably shouldn't have been benched anyway didn't deserve to be benched. And then Tyrod Taylor, of course, came in, led the team to 3 scores in a row, 1 field goal, 1 rushing touchdown, and 1 passing touchdown. Not in that order, but still. And salvaged the day. So I actually am still a firm believer of Tyrod Taylor. I think he'll land somewhere next year as well, and he deserves that because he's kind of stood it out. Like, he dealt with being Flacco's backup and then dealt with the Rex Ryan nonsense. And any quarterback that can survive Rex Ryan is good on you. So hopefully next year he gets a chance somewhere else where he stands to be recognized and maybe surrounded with some talent. But I still think he's the guy going forward for fantasy.
I think the Bills just didn't want to win. I think I'm serious. I think they didn't want to win because they've been doing everything since day one to try to not win. Trading away their best players. They are probably looking at this like, oh, this is going way better than we thought. I think they honestly knew what they had with Peterman. And I think they wanted to tank a couple of games. And I don't think that they expected him to tank that badly to the point where they had to go back to the guy that got him in the playoff hunt. So I think now that for better or worse, Tyrod Taylor's your starting quarterback. And the Bills have to accept the fact they are primed with the way that this season's going to get into the playoffs as a wild card. And I think that that's terrifying to them because they want no part of that business. They are in full rebuild mode. And this is messing up their plan. Just like when the Giants randomly won against the Chiefs, which was ridiculous. Kareem Hunt, where are you? Getting bottled up, not doing as well as he did the first 3 weeks. So it's those things that make me laugh, and that's why I enjoy the last half of the season. Sometimes, you get to a point, you're right, the Eagles are great, the Patriots are in there, and the Steelers. Those are the top 3 teams at the moment that are going to be in the playoffs. But now it's kind of fun to see where everything else lands, and there could be some really horrendous matchups in the playoffs. That'll be very amusing to the two of us. But before we start to wrap up, Franco, give me who you buying this week in fantasy football.
So Orleans Darkwa on the terrible Giants. But the reality is, even when they were losing by a significant amount this week, they ran the ball 26 times, and he's got a majority of the load. Mm-hmm. I think the Giants need to find out if he's going to be the running back of the future because Gallman hasn't worked out, Perkins hasn't worked out, Vereen sadly hasn't worked out. So Dark was going to get a lot of the play to see if he can be the guy they bring in next year to be the starting running back. So I'm buying him.
And who are you selling?
Dak Prescott. Unfortunately, without Ezekiel Elliott, and they've lost some offensive line pieces, they're just not going to be good, and he can't exist without the running game. I think he's a good quarterback, but their upcoming schedule is really hard. I'm not buying it, so I'm selling Dak Prescott. If you can get someone to buy him on name value alone, do it.
And then finally, Franco, we both have not seen Justice League. I'm seeing it on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day. I'm not super excited, but I feel like I'm obligated to see it as a fan.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll try to see it before the next show, so we can have a very educated discussion about the Justice League. Wow, sentence doesn't belong. So we can have a discussion about the Justice League, and that is our tease for next week.
Put a giant tease, flash it over our faces. Tease, 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 tease.
That's a little dangerous. I feel like that it might have other means. So maybe. No, we'll go with it. We'll be risque on the BFF show.
And premiere. You can only get that kind of entertainment right here. We're about to wrap up. So, Franco, what did you learn today?
I learned that we can single-handedly rename a station.
Yep.
Given that it's still called AMP1, but we refer to it now about 7 times as AMP Premiere.
Yep.
And I say we go all the way. I think when we post our social media about the show being on AMP, we're going to go AMP Premiere until they buy it themselves. What did you learn?
I learned that our friendship and our bond and love for each other is unbreakable. And I'm very happy to be able to showcase that here on AMP Premiere. For the BFF show, my name is Brendan.
I'm Franco.
Have a good night. Happy Thanksgiving. And if you're seeing this
Happy Thanksgiving.
And it's not Thanksgiving, you know what? Just deal with it. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
We hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Bye.
Bye.